My name is Arthur Finch, and at 33, I find myself in the bustling heart of Viridia, a city that hums with ceaseless ambition, where towering glass and steel structures pierce the sky like defiant promises. I work as a landscape architect for Greenscape Innovations, a firm dedicated to weaving natural beauty into the urban fabric. I'm fortunate enough to share my life with Clara, a botanist whose laughter is as bright as the morning sun, and our spirited 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who sees magic in every dewdrop. We live in a cozy brownstone nestled beside the city's historic Elmwood Park, where the ancient trees whisper stories of generations past. Our mornings are a symphony of Clara's gentle humming as she tends to her indoor plants and Lily's excited chatter about the adventures awaiting her at school. In these moments, as the aroma of freshly brewed coffee fills our home, I often reflect on how truly blessed I am. Yet, even in the most idyllic scenes, shadows can lurk. My own began with my father, Reginald Finch. A titan in Viridia's construction industry, at 68, he still presides over Finch Holdings, a sprawling empire responsible for some of the city's most iconic, albeit imposing, structures. He is a man carved from granite, immaculately dressed, his voice a low rumble of authority, every word a calculated command. To the world, he is an unstoppable force of progress. To me, he was always an impenetrable fortress, his constant judgment leaving me feeling perpetually inadequate. I remember vividly winning my first National Design Award at 25 for a sustainable urban garden concept. I rushed to show him, brimming with youthful pride. He merely glanced at the gleaming plaque. "Impressive, Arthur," he'd intoned, his voice flat. "But designing gardens for others is hardly building an empire, is it?" His words, though delivered calmly, always felt like tiny, precise cuts. He saw my profession as a trivial hobby, a stark contrast to the legacy he envisioned for me, one where I would seamlessly take the reins of Finch Holdings. But I refused. I was determined to forge my own path, unwilling to be just another cog in his grand machinery, unwilling to become another Reginald Finch. My mother, Beatrice, was the gentle counterpoint to my father's austerity. At 65, she possessed the serene grace of a retired art historian, dedicating her time to community garden projects and meticulously tending to our family's sprawling rose garden at the ancestral estate. Our weekend visits, Clara, Lily, and I, were always my sanctuary. My mother would take Lily into the garden, teaching her the delicate art of rose care, while I'd help her with minor repairs around the estate. My father was, more often than not, engrossed in his work, his presence a rare commodity. In those quieter moments, my mother would look at me, her eyes brimming with warmth, and say, "You are my greatest masterpiece, Arthur. No matter what your father says, I know you're building something truly beautiful." She was my anchor, the one who navigated the turbulent waters between my father and me. I recall the countless times my father would erupt in frustration over my perceived lack of ambition. My mother would gently guide me away, offering a cup of herbal tea and sharing anecdotes from her own youth, tales of uncovering forgotten histories, of nurturing beauty in unexpected places. She instilled in me the quiet strength to believe in my own worth, to understand that I didn't need external validation, especially not from him. My life continued in this delicate balance, oscillating between the sun-drenched happiness of my family and the persistent shadow of my strained relationship with my father. I tried to dismiss his cutting remarks, his disappointed silences. I had Clara, Lily, meaningful work, and a mother's unconditional love. Yet, a quiet unease persisted, a sense that this fragile equilibrium could shatter at any moment. That morning began like any other. I was at the office early, meticulously reviewing blueprints for a new eco-friendly park development. Helena, my colleague, offered insightful feedback, and Mr. Davies, our boss, beamed. "Arthur, you always manage to turn our concrete jungles into verdant oases." I laughed, feeling a comfortable ease settle over me. Then my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I usually let unknown calls go to voicemail during meetings, but an inexplicable dread pricked at me. Excusing myself, I stepped into the hallway. "Hello, is this Mr. Arthur Finch?" A woman's voice, strained, struggling for composure. "I'm a nurse from Viridia Central Hospital. I'm so sorry to inform you that your mother, Mrs. Beatrice Finch, passed away this morning. She suffered a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. We did everything we could, but her words dissolved into a muffled roar, as if I were submerged in water. My heart hammered against my ribs, blood thrumming in my ears. The world tilted on its axis. No, I whispered, my voice raw, broken. No, you must be mistaken. My mother. She can't be. The nurse continued her apologies, but her words were meaningless sounds. You're saying my mother died from a brain hemorrhage? I asked again, my voice trembling, as if repetition could alter the horrifying truth. How is that possible? My mother was healthy. She had no history of such issues. Are you sure it's my mother, Beatrice Finch? Yes, sir, she replied, her voice filled with pity. I am truly sorry. Can you come to the hospital now? There's some paperwork. I nodded, a silent, meaningless gesture, and hung up, standing paralyzed in the hallway. The familiar sounds of the office, the sunlight streaming through the windows, the distant city hum, it all felt alien, a cruel backdrop to my unfolding nightmare. I don't recall how I navigated back to the meeting, how I mumbled my excuses, or what I said to Helena and Mr. Davies. All I remember is stumbling out of the building, fumbling with my car keys, and driving in a daze. The sky mirrored my despair, a light drizzle beginning, blurring the windshield like tears. One question pounded in my mind, a relentless drumbeat. How could she be gone? How could someone so vibrant vanish in a single, brutal instant? I pressed the accelerator, the car a blur through the familiar streets of Viridia, now shrouded in an otherworldly haze. The rain intensified, a gray curtain descending upon the city. The rhythmic squeak of the wipers felt like a desperate heartbeat, trying to tether me to reality, but my mind was adrift. I couldn't accept it. My mother, with her gentle smile, hands always dusted with earth, her voice as comforting as a summer breeze, couldn't be extinguished by something so sudden, so senseless. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, a futile attempt to control the burgeoning chaos within. My chest felt constricted, as if a monumental weight pressed down upon it. My breaths came in ragged gasps, and I felt myself spiraling into a bottomless chasm. I wanted to scream, to pound my fists against something, anything, but all I could do was drive, as if maintaining a straight line on the road could somehow impose order on the raging storm inside me. It didn't. Nothing could. Memories, vivid and heart-wrenching, flooded my mind, like an old film flickering in slow motion. I saw myself, a 10-year-old boy, seated at the polished oak table in my parents' grand estate. My mother, in her artist's smock, holding a charcoal stick and a large sketch pad. Arthur, look, she'd said, her voice soft as a whisper. Every stroke has a purpose. You don't need to draw perfectly. Just draw what's in your heart. I would spend hours sketching trees and imagined landscapes, and she was always there, her smile encouraging, her praise genuine for my clumsy efforts. Those afternoons were where my love for landscape design, for crafting spaces that invited serenity, took root. But not all memories were warm. I remembered the heavy tread of my father's footsteps as he entered the room, his cold eyes sweeping over my drawings. What's the point of this fanciful nonsense, Beatrice? He'd declare, his voice flat, laced with disdain. He needs to learn to apply himself seriously, not drift in artistic reverie like you. My mother would remain silent, only squeezing my hand tighter, a silent affirmation that I didn't need to prove anything to him. But his words were sharp shards, embedding themselves, leaving small, unhealing scars. Back in the present, the rain outside intensified, threatening to engulf the car. I fumbled for my phone and dialed my father's number, a desperate hope that he could offer some explanation, any solace. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times, but no answer. I called again and again, each unanswered ring a fresh wound. Why wasn't he picking up? Where was he? Did he even know about moms? I couldn't complete the thought. A chilling premonition, dark and heavy, began to form in my mind. My father was always in control of his business, his family, even the emotional temperature of a room. Could he know something I didn't? The drive to Viridia Central Hospital felt endless, the rain-blurred windshield a metaphor for my shattered reality. When I finally parked, my hands were shaking so violently I could barely open the car door. I stepped out, the rain instantly soaking my coat, but I was oblivious. I half ran into the main lobby, my breath ragged, my heart a frantic drum. The receptionist looked at me with an air of expectation. "Mr. Finch, this way, please." I was led down a long, sterile corridor, the acrid smell of antiseptic churning my stomach. At the end of the hall, I saw my father, Reginald Finch. He stood impeccably dressed in a dark gray suit, conversing with a doctor. He appeared unervingly calm, almost detached, as if discussing a routine business acquisition, not the sudden death of his wife. I approached, my voice a raw whisper. "Dad, what's happening? Is Mom? Is she really?" My father turned, his eyes as cold and hard as the granite his company favored. "Arthur, you're here. The doctor was just explaining. Your mother suffered a catastrophic cerebral hemorrhage. They couldn't save her." His voice was utterly steady, devoid of any tremor, any hint of grief. I stared at him, desperately searching for a flicker of loss, but found only an impassive mask. The doctor, a kind-faced man with wire-rimmed glasses, interjected gently. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Finch. Mrs. Beatrice was brought in this morning, but her condition was irreversible. There were no warning signs. It was a sudden, massive event." Sudden. I almost shouted, the word echoing startlingly in the quiet corridor, making both the doctor and my father flinch. My mother had no history of such problems. Just a few weeks ago, she was planting roses with my daughter, laughing. How could she? Who brought her here? What happened? My father cut me off, his voice sharp, authoritative. "That's enough, Arthur. Don't make a scene. Your mother is gone. Now we need to handle the paperwork and maintain the family's composure." Understood. He emphasized composure, as if it were the only thing that mattered. I stood there stunned. Composure? My mother had just died, and his primary concern was outward appearance? I wanted to scream, to grab him, to demand answers, but the words choked in my throat. A nurse approached, handing me a small, clear bag containing my mother's personal effects, her worn leather wallet, the sapphire pendant she always wore, and a silk scarf embroidered with tiny roses. I clutched the scarf, feeling as if my heart were being squeezed dry. The faint, sweet scent of her signature rose perfume lingered on the fabric, a ghostly presence. My father turned away, pulling out his phone, stepping into the hallway to speak in hushed tones with someone. I watched his back, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Something was terribly wrong. He was too calm, too utterly devoid of emotion. The woman he had lived with for over 3 decades was gone. Yet here he stood, signing papers, making calls, as if it were just another day at the office. I sank into a chair in the waiting room, my mother's meager belongings still clutched in my lap. The hospital corridor was cold, the distant sounds of footsteps and hushed conversations echoing hollowly, as if from another world. I looked down at the scarf, my fingers tracing the embroidered roses. In my mind, images of my mother's radiant smile clashed violently with my father's glacial stare. The chilling premonition solidified, growing into a dark, undeniable current pulling me under. My mother's death wasn't simple. I didn't know why, but I felt it deep in my bones. 3 days later, I stood before the tranquil Crescentwood Memorial Garden on the outskirts of Viridia, where the perpetually gray sky seemed to press down with an oppressive weight. The rain had ceased, but the air was heavy, damp, as if the heavens themselves held their breath for my mother's final farewell. I had meticulously handled every detail of the memorial, from selecting the delicate white roses for her casket to organizing the quiet service. My father had offered no assistance. He had called the night before, his voice flat and devoid of warmth. "I'm tied up with some urgent matters regarding the estate, Arthur. Can you manage the arrangements?" I had clenched my teeth, forcing out a clipped yes, though inside I wanted to rage at his callousness. My mother, his wife of over 30 years, and he used paperwork as an excuse to distance himself. I stood at the entrance to the memorial garden, greeting solemn-faced relatives and my mother's old friends. They offered hushed condolences and sorrowful hugs, words that seemed to evaporate before reaching my understanding. Beatrice was a remarkable woman, gone too soon. We'll miss her gentle spirit. Each phrase felt like a fresh cut, reminding me of the crushing finality of her absence. But what truly twisted the knife in my heart were the hushed whispers behind cupped hands. "Where's Reginald?" "He's not here." So strange, a husband not attending his wife's service. I heard them all, but kept my head bowed, desperately clinging to the facade of family unity my father demanded. I couldn't bear for them to see the gaping wound within our family. Clara stood steadfastly by my side, her hand a warm, comforting presence in mine. She didn't speak much, merely offering gentle squeezes, a silent affirmation that she was there, my anchor in this overwhelming storm. Lily, our sweet daughter, dressed in a black dress far too large for her small frame, looked around, her eyes wide with confusion. "Daddy, where's Grandma?" she asked, her voice clear but laced with uncertainty. I knelt, pulling her into a tight embrace, fighting back the wave of tears. "Grandma, she's in a beautiful place now, sweetheart. She's planting endless rose gardens in heaven." Lily nodded slowly, but I knew the enormity of loss was beyond her grasp. How could a 6-year-old comprehend such a profound absence? When my mother's casket, adorned with a cascade of white roses, her favorite bloom, was brought out, my legs felt like pillars of stone. I walked behind it, each step heavy, as if I were traversing a path with no end. The mourners around me bowed their heads, some openly weeping, but all I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart. As the casket was slowly lowered into the earth, I could no longer contain the anguish. Tears spilled over, hot and relentless, tracing paths down my cheeks. I missed her so intensely. Her departure was too abrupt, too illogical, like a beloved book ripped apart in the middle of a poignant chapter. Clara's arms wrapped around me, her whispered words a balm. "You're not alone, Arthur. I'm here. Lily's here." I nodded, but inside, I felt an aching void. I wanted to scream, to demand why my mother had been taken, why no one could offer a logical explanation. But I merely stood there, watching, as shovelfuls of earth began to cover the coffin, burying a piece of my own life along with it. My father never appeared. Not a call, not a text, not a single word of regret or concern. I had held on to a sliver of hope, even if just a microscopic one, that he would materialize at the 11th hour, that he would stand there, even if his eyes remained dry, even if just to maintain the pretense of a grieving husband. But no, Reginald Finch chose to be conspicuously absent on the day my mother was laid to rest. His absence was a stinging rebuke, a stark betrayal of everything my mother had quietly sacrificed for this family. After the memorial, Clara and I took Lily home. Our brownstone by Elmwood Park, once vibrant with laughter, now felt oppressively silent. Clara made me a cup of calming chamomile tea. "Are you all right?" she asked, her eyes brimming with worry. I shook my head, unable to speak, my throat constricted by a knot of raw grief and burgeoning anger. I picked up my phone, scrolling aimlessly, desperately searching for something to cling to, some distraction from the consuming pain. Then, a perverse impulse guided my thumb to my father's social media profile, a place I rarely visited. His posts were usually a monotonous stream of corporate achievements, gala dinners, or trite philosophical platitudes about success. But this time my breath hitched. A newly posted photo appeared. My father, impeccably dressed in a pristine white linen suit, standing beside a woman strikingly young, perhaps in her early 30s. They stood on a sun-drenched balcony overlooking a cerulean sea, both smiling broadly, crystal wine glasses glinting in the light. The caption was succinct, yet it sliced through me like a razor. "A new chapter begins." Blood surged to my head, my breath caught in my throat. My mother had been buried mere hours ago, and my father, her husband of over 3 decades, was publicly celebrating a new chapter with a stranger. My grip tightened on the phone, a desperate urge to smash it, to scream, to confront him immediately, consuming me. Clara, noticing the sudden rigidity of my posture, the stark change in my expression, asked softly, "Arthur, what's wrong?" I thrust the phone into her hands, incapable of speech. Her eyes widened as she looked at the screen, then slowly, disbelievingly, narrowed, as if she too found the image incomprehensible. The pain within me, festering and ignored, erupted into a wildfire of pure, unadulterated rage. I shot up from the sofa and walked to the antique bookshelf where an old, framed wedding photograph of my parents sat. In the picture, my mother was youthful and radiant in her lace gown, and my father, though always stern, looked at her with what I had once believed was genuine affection. I touched the frame, my fingers trembling. "Mom," I whispered, the word choked with tears. "What happened to you? Why is he doing this?" My gaze hardened, as if a part of my heart had solidified into ice. The chilling premonition was no longer a subtle undertow. It was a roaring storm in my chest. My mother's death was not random. I had no concrete proof, no answers, but I knew, with an absolute certainty that resonated deep in my bones, that the truth was being meticulously concealed. And I, Arthur Finch, would not rest until I had unearthed every dark secret. That night, long after Clara and Lily were asleep, and the brownstone was swallowed by the encroaching darkness, I sat alone in the living room, holding the bag of my mother's personal effects from the hospital. The worn leather wallet, the sapphire pendant, and the rose-embroidered silk scarf. Simple items, yet imbued with the profound weight of her entire life. I opened the wallet, my fingers brushing against an old, creased photograph of me and Lily that she had always carried. Tears welled up again, but I clenched my jaw, forcing them back. I didn't want to cry anymore. I wanted to understand. I needed to know why my mother was gone, why my father was acting as if she had meant nothing to him. Then, my phone buzzed a sharp, cold sound that shattered the profound silence of the room. I glanced at the screen, and my heart seemed to seize. My mother's number. Unmistakable. A short, cryptic message. "I'm not dead. Come to the memorial garden now." I froze, my hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Was this some cruel, elaborate joke? A devastating system error? My mother was dead. I had seen her coffin lowered into the earth, felt the cold soil cover her life. So where could this message possibly be coming from? I stared at the screen as if it would spontaneously offer answers. Then, with shaking fingers, I dialed the number back. It rang once, twice, then cut off abruptly, as if someone on the other end had deliberately disconnected. I called again and again, but only silence met my desperate attempts. A powerful, primal instinct surged within me, like a fire igniting in my very core. I stopped thinking. I sprang to my feet, grabbed a powerful flashlight from the utility drawer, shrugged on a waterproof jacket, and rushed out the door. Clara was still peacefully asleep, and I dared not wake her. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I had to get to the memorial garden. I had to find the truth, whatever it might be. My car sped through the pre-dawn darkness, a light rain falling, blurring the windshield. The road to Crescentwood Memorial Garden, nestled on the city's quiet outskirts, was cloaked in black, illuminated only by the weak glow of my headlights. I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The memorial garden loomed before me, cold and eerily silent. Rows of tombstones faded into the dim light like silent sentinels. I parked the car hastily and stepped out, the rain instantly soaking through my jacket, chilling my skin. The beam of the flashlight in my hand cut through the gloom, illuminating the winding path leading to my mother's grave. Each step felt impossibly heavy, as if I carried the weight of the world, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. I had to see. As I approached the freshly turned earth of her gravesite, I froze. A figure stood there, a few meters away, directly in front of a new headstone. A frail, trembling silhouette, yet achingly, impossibly familiar. I raised the flashlight, and the beam cut through the misty air, illuminating her face. My mother. It was undeniably her thinner, her hair damp and clinging to her face from the rain, but her eyes, those warm, intelligent eyes, were still bright, still unmistakably hers. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to breathe, unable to believe my own eyes. This couldn't be real. My mother was dead. I had buried her. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice faint but clear, the sound tearing through the surreal silence. Then, she broke into heart-wrenching sobs, her frail shoulders shaking violently. I rushed forward, wrapping her in my arms, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. She felt so real, so solid, it was almost overwhelming. The warmth of her body, the faint, familiar scent of her rose perfume, the embrace I thought I had lost forever. I trembled, sobbing, holding her tightly, terrified that if I let go, she would vanish like a fleeting dream. "Mom, Mom." I could only repeat her name, my voice broken, shattered. How are you alive?" She took my hand, her fingers cold but surprisingly firm. She looked into my eyes, her gaze a complex mosaic of pain, fear, and unwavering resolve. "You can't tell anyone I'm alive," she whispered, her voice trembling, as if afraid the very air might carry her secret. "I'll explain everything to you, Arthur. I had a reason to fake my death." I was stunned. 1,000 questions flooded my mind, a chaotic torrent of disbelief and desperate yearning for answers. A plan? Who helped her? Why did she have to fake her death? And why me? Why trust me with this impossible message? I wanted to ask, to understand, but no words would form. The gentle rain continued to fall, light and cold, cloaking us in a thin, ethereal veil of mist. We stood there, beside her freshly covered grave, in the desolate memorial garden, like two lost ghosts in a surreal, unfolding story. Fear and profound mystery enveloped me. But in that moment, one undeniable truth cut through the fog. My mother was alive. Suddenly, my mother clutched my hand, pulling me away from the dim glow of the flashlight. "It's not safe here," she whispered, her voice trembling but imbued with a new, steely resolve. "Follow me, Arthur. We need to talk." I nodded, my mind still reeling, and obediently followed her through the silent rows of headstones, down a narrow, overgrown path leading away from the memorial garden. The relentless rain soaked through my jacket, but I felt no cold. The only sensations coursing through me were shock, mingled with an overwhelming surge of joy and a pervasive, unnamed fear. She led me to an old, unassuming car parked discreetly at the corner of a secluded road, a faded navy sedan that bore no resemblance to any vehicle our family owned. She opened the passenger door and gestured for me to get in. I hesitated, staring at her, still unable to fully believe she was standing before me, flesh and blood. "Mom, are you truly all right?" I asked, my voice faltering. She merely nodded, her eyes a complex blend of tenderness and intense tension. "Get in, son. I'll explain everything." We drove off into the consuming darkness of the night, my mother behind the wheel, while I sat beside her, still clutching the rose-embroidered silk scarf. The house she took me to was tucked away in a remote corner of Viridia's outskirts, largely obscured by a dense grove of ancient oak trees. It was a small, weathered cottage with a chipped slate roof and windows heavily draped with thick, dark curtains. My mother turned off the engine, then meticulously scanned her surroundings, as if she feared unseen eyes watching our every move. She led me inside. The interior was stark, almost desolate. A simple wooden table, two mismatched chairs, and a narrow fold-out bed in one corner. It was a world away from the opulent mansion she had shared with my father. She poured me a glass of water, but I didn't touch it. I sat, staring at her, waiting, desperate for answers. She sat across from me, her thin hands clasped tightly together, as if she were trying to hold herself together. "I know you're angry," she began, her voice a fragile whisper. "Angry that I hid this from you, that I allowed you to endure the unbearable pain of losing me. But you have to understand, Arthur, I had no other choice." I shook my head, trying to suppress the turbulent surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "Mom, why? Why did you have to do this? Why did you have to fake your death? And Dad, does he have anything to do with this?" Just uttering my father's name sent a fresh wave of heat through my veins. The image of him with that young woman in the social media photo, so fresh in my mind, felt like a literal knife twisting in my heart. My mother took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes darkening as if she were sifting through a painful, traumatic archive of memories. "It started a few months ago," she said, her voice barely audible. "Your father, he changed, Arthur. He became colder, more ruthless than ever. I discovered he was having an affair with a young woman, someone named Serena, who works at Finch Holdings. But he wasn't just being discreet. He was blatant about it, almost as if he wanted to humiliate me." I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to interrupt, though every fiber of my being screamed to do so. I had suspected as much after seeing that photo, but hearing her confirm it, hearing the raw pain in her voice, felt like a devastating blow to my chest. She continued, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and profound sorrow. "When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. Instead, he threatened me. He wanted me to sign over assets, shares in the company, properties, everything in my name. He said if I didn't agree, I would disappear. Disappear? I repeated, my voice choking with disbelief and horror. You mean Dad threatened to kill you? She nodded, tears streaming down her face, her eyes red and swollen. I wasn't sure if he'd actually go through with it, but I felt the danger. He started watching me. Arthur. I found hidden cameras in the master bedroom, in the living room. He'd fly into terrifying rages out of nowhere, and once, he even shoved me when I refused to sign the papers. One night, he completely lost control, screaming that I would regret not obeying him. That's when I knew I had to do something drastic to protect myself. I sat in stunned silence, feeling as if my entire world was collapsing for a second time. My father, the man I had always thought was merely domineering and emotionally distant, could he truly be this cruel, this monstrous? I remembered his chillingly emotionless gaze at the hospital, the way he had so dispassionately signed papers, as if my mother's death were just another bureaucratic task to be checked off. But she wasn't finished. I had an old friend at Viridia Central Hospital, she said, her voice gaining a fragile steadiness, as if recounting a meticulously planned strategy. Her name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. I told her everything, and she, with immense personal risk, agreed to help. I planned to fake a cerebral hemorrhage. She paused, taking another shaky breath. The housekeeper didn't know anything, of course. So when I collapsed, she panicked and called for an ambulance immediately. Everything unfolded exactly as planned. At the hospital, Evelyn recorded my cardiac arrest and helped me leave through a secure back exit. They used a sophisticated medical mannequin to substitute the body. Everyone, including your father, believed I was dead. I listened, my head spinning, a dizzying cocktail of shock and a nascent, burning anger. Mom, you planned all of this. But why didn't you tell me? Do you have any idea how much it hurt to think you were gone? My voice broke, torn between the overwhelming surge of love and the bitter edge of betrayal. I thought of the agonizing past few days, the sleepless nights, the public tears at the memorial, the gut-wrenching grief. She had allowed me to endure it all, without a single hint of the truth. She lowered her head, fresh tears tracing paths through the existing ones on her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Arthur. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't take the risk. Your father, he's too dangerous, too cunning. If he suspected even the slightest thing, I don't know what would have happened to both of us. I chose you because I knew you wouldn't abandon me, because you're the only one I truly trust. I looked at her, my heart torn in two. I pitied her, this woman who had been forced to orchestrate her own death merely to survive. But I was also angry. Angry at being kept in the dark, at being forced to grieve a lie. Angry at my father, the man I had once called Dad, for pushing her to this terrifying precipice. The image of him in his perfect suit, with that cold, detached smile, now felt like a predatory threat. I had once believed him merely controlling, but now I saw a far more sinister, dangerous individual. She gripped my hand, her eyes filled with a new, fierce resolve. I had no other choice, Arthur. Faking my death was the only way to escape him and make him drop his guard. But now I need you. We have to uncover the truth before he finds out I'm still alive. I stood frozen, each word from my mother cut through the last vestiges of my shock, gripping me like an icy vice. Outside, the rain pounded relentlessly on the tin roof of the secluded cottage, its drumming mingling with the ragged breaths of my mother and me in that small, shadowed room. The dim, yellow light cast long, dancing shadows on her gaunt face, highlighting the lines of fear, pain, and fierce resilience etched into her features. I looked at her, the woman I thought I had lost forever, and felt a cold fire ignite in my chest. Pain, rage, and an unyielding love for my mother fused into a singular, sharpened determination. I would protect her, and I would make my father, Reginald Finch, pay for every vile thing he had done. But I knew this wasn't the time for impulsive, emotional actions. If my mother was right, if my father was truly as dangerous and cunning as she claimed, we needed irrefutable evidence, a meticulously crafted plan. I gripped her hand tightly, my voice surprisingly steady, firm. Mom, I'll do whatever it takes to help you. But I need to know what you want me to do. Where do we start? She sighed, a tremor running through her. Her eyes scanned the sparse, unadorned room as if searching for an anchor, a solid footing in this new, terrifying reality. We need evidence, Arthur. Concrete evidence of what he's done. Not just to me, but everything he's hidden in the past. Your father is careful, but he's overconfident now. He thinks I'm dead, that no one stands in his way. This is our chance. I nodded, though my mind was still a chaotic whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I wanted to scream, to confront my father immediately, to unleash the years of pent-up anger and frustration. But I knew she was right. We needed to act strategically, intelligently, not emotionally. I'll keep this secret, Mom, I said, my voice now remarkably steady. I won't tell anyone, not even Clara or Lily. But you have to promise me you won't disappear again. I couldn't endure losing you a second time. She offered a faint, sad smile, her frail fingers gently stroking my cheek, just as she had when I was a child. I promise, Arthur. From now on, I won't hide anything from you. Returning home that night, I felt as if I were living in two distinct, parallel worlds. One was the warm brownstone by Elmwood Park, where Clara and Lily slept peacefully, where I had once believed everything was perfectly in order. The other was a chilling, dark storm, where my mother had been forced to fake her own death to survive, where my father, the man I still called Dad, might be far more ruthless and dangerous than I had ever dared to imagine. I slipped into the house as silently as a ghost, careful not to wake Clara. She lay in bed, her breathing soft and steady, but I couldn't bring myself to join her. I sat in the living room, staring at the framed photograph of my mother on the mantelpiece, wondering how I could possibly keep such a monumental secret from the wife I loved more than life itself. The next morning, I forced myself to act normal. I brewed coffee, made Lily's favorite blueberry pancakes, and drove her to school. Clara looked at me, her eyes filled with tender concern. "Are you okay, Arthur?" she asked, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "You look like you haven't slept a wink." I forced a smile, attempting to mask the raw tension that thrummed beneath my skin. "I'm fine, honey. It's just, I'm still not used to Mom being gone." Clara hugged me tightly, and a fresh pang of guilt pierced me for not telling her the truth. But I had promised my mother, and I couldn't take the risk. Not because I didn't trust Clara implicitly, but because I feared any small, inadvertent mistake could inadvertently put my mother's life in even greater peril. Meanwhile, my mother remained hidden in the secluded cottage, contacting me only through an encrypted burner phone provided by Dr. Reed, her old friend. Each time I received a message from her, my heart raced, as if I were a character in a high-stakes spy thriller. "Don't call directly," she instructed. "Only text when absolutely necessary. And be careful, Arthur. Your father isn't easily fooled." While my mother lived like a phantom, my father, Reginald Finch, reveled in a conspicuously lavish lifestyle. I meticulously monitored his social media, and each new post felt like a fresh stab to my heart. There he was, lounging on a luxurious yacht in the Caribbean, an arm draped casually around the young woman, Serena, smiling broadly as if he had never known or lost a wife of 30 years. Another post from a high-stakes poker game in Monte Carlo, a crystal glass of aged scotch in hand, captioned, "Freedom is living true to yourself." I gripped my phone, a visceral urge to smash it against the wall, but I knew I had to maintain my composure.